Last week, I ended by suggesting that true happiness at work consists in pursuing a successful career, but only in the context of having a vocation which is intrinsically, personally fulfilling. This brings us on to today's topic, which is philosophy, religion, and coaching. It's a difficult topic for reasons that I will come to. But meanwhile, I simply want to stress that, though naturally I have views about religion, they are irrelevant to what I shall be lecturing about this morning, which I hope will be of interest and use to people, whatever their religious views are. Now, in fact, I've come to the conclusion that there are really only three types of view about religion. Many people, perhaps an increasing number of people, believe that this must be all there is. The universe and we ourselves exist for no purpose, and death is the end forever of everything that we will ever experience. Other people, many other people, and until recently almost everyone, believed this can't be all there is. The existence of the universe and of ourselves within it cannot be entirely pointless, and death cannot be the end of everything for everyone forever. Now, most of us, most of the time, now and throughout history, have spent rather little time and energy worrying about which of these two views are true and finding them either uninteresting or impossible to answer. And some of us, perhaps most of us, like me anyway, vacillate between the two views, being alternatively certain about the truth of each, even though they are quite clearly incompatible. Now, religion as such is an embarrassing subject because in modern plural societies, where different people hold so many different beliefs about religion, we usually don't know whether the people we are talking to, including coaches and coachees, have strong pro or anti-religious views, or are more or less religionless, agnostic, or indifferent. But because people hold their religious convictions with such passion, we usually don't like to ask them what they believe. And when we do, we often wish we hadn't. Also, it is usually thought therapeutically inappropriate to risk disturbing people's religious convictions because it's damaging to the relationship with the coach and possibly upsetting for the client. So we don't, on the whole, ask clients what they believe about religion, and don't tell them what we believe, and we react neutrally if they bring the subject up. But actually, the subject is unavoidable, at least to some extent. The primary, perhaps the sole business of the coach is to help people cope more effectively with the realities of life. So it's important to know what people think those realities are and what they think they can do about them. Thus, if this is all there is, if everything is ultimately pointless, If eternal annihilation is the destiny of all of us, an apparently pessimistic view, how, if at all, can our lives be made worth living in spite of this? Or, on the other hand, if everything is part of some cosmic master plan, which means that if and when it is finally realized, all shall be well for us, an optimistic view, how does this affect how we should live here and now? What we all want for ourselves and our coachees is for our hopes to be realistic and our efforts to realize them effective. This requires finding and passing on a way to avoid despair, for which religious faith has been the traditional antidote. Now, I want to stress at this point that I at least distinguish very sharply between good and bad religion, by which I don't mean the same as true and false religion. I mean good and bad religion. At its best, religion, even if its claims about gods and life after death turn out to be false, has unquestionably inspired many people to deeds of extraordinary charity and self-sacrifice. It has also inspired a vast amount of the beauty which human beings have created in the world, from great buildings to music and poetry. Above all, it has provided great comfort and consolation to innumerable people amidst the many sufferings to which our lives are subject, and has been the source of some of the deepest recorded experience of sheer joy. This is good, reasonable, and life-enhancing religion. But religion has also provided justification for some of the most unspeakable acts of violence in human history, from appalling wars of religion to unspeakable tortures and other cruelties inflicted on individuals in the name of religion. It has also been, and still is, a source of demonstrably false beliefs, irrational fanaticism, pathetic self-deception, more or less dangerous delusions, and an embarrassing and sometimes brutal insistence on inflicting private and mostly unbelievable religious convictions or religious certainties on those who dissent from what the believers hold to be so certain in respect of religious truths. This makes religious discussion at best embarrassing, at worst murderous. This is bad religion, irrational and destructive religion. Fortunately, coaches do not need to go into great detail into that distinction, though it's worth bearing in mind. All that coaches and everybody else needs to know about faith is this: whether you believe that this must be or that this can't be all there is, though there are good and bad reasons which can be advanced for both positions, these reasons can never be conclusive. Certainty, either way, which goes beyond what the evidence warrants, therefore requires a measure of faith. So, moreover, the ultimate truth about morality, whether it's investigated by theologians or by scientists, is that it is mostly incomprehensible to us. So if there is a God, I should expect at best to know no more about God, his nature, God's nature and purposes, than my dog knows about mine. If there are alternative universes, as many scientists claim, I can only imagine, but never experience here and now, what it would be like to live in them. But in fact, regardless of what they believe about ultimate and eternal realities, almost everyone has faith that here and now it is possible to lead a good life and for life to be worth living. They also have faith in morality, i.e., that there really is a difference between right and wrong behavior, better or worse ways of living our lives, and that we ought, at least sometimes, to make substantial sacrifices of our present desires in order to secure the greater well-being of others. Such an ethic of unselfishness, as we have seen, is what all great religions teach, and it's also what all the most influential non-religious theories of morality actually teach. Moreover, if coaches didn't believe themselves in such an ethic, they would be useless as coaches. And if their clients didn't believe it, they would be beyond help. So back to morality. In the last lecture, I hope I convinced you that most people nowadays think that what makes life worth living is loving personal relationships and a successful working life. Overcoming frustrations in these areas is where coaches, life coaches, business coaches, relationship coaches, recovery coaches, even academic and sports coaches are most likely to be able to offer effective help. I hope I have convinced you that in all relationships of love, happiness is unattainable if you or your loved one, partner, child, parent, friend, is only interested in the satisfactions you or they can get out of the relationship and don't really care about the happiness or well-being of the other. In other words, selfishness kills the joy of loving, and true love is always, to some degree, self-sacrificial. But what about success in our work? What price unselfishness here? Last week, I left you with the challenge: how do we coach people about achieving success in their work without advising them to behave with complete lack of moral concern, as recommended by Machiavelli? Let's revisit that challenge. Machiavelli thought that the supreme good for human beings consists in the satisfactions of ambition for fame and fortune. He also thought that this required in one's public or working life behaving with ruthless selfishness and ignoring all the requirements of conventional morality, that we treat others with kindness, honesty, and fairness. He also thought that we should be expert at reputation management. In my own view, based on observation of people in all walks of life who are successfully ambitious in Machiavellian terms, he should have added that such success usually requires a massive talent for self-deception. So how do we answer this challenge from Machiavelli? First of all, there's nothing wrong in wanting to be rich and famous or otherwise successful in one's work as measured by the wealth and status that it earns for you. But if that's all you care about, You will probably be mostly dissatisfied during your working life, and you will ultimately be disappointed at the end of it. You will never have enough success soon enough or for long enough, and in the end, the satisfactions which money and status afford will come to seem not only inevitably transient, but also hollow. True happiness at work depends on feeling while you're actually doing it. This work is itself worth doing because contributing to goals which are themselves worth achieving, and I am doing it as well as I can. If I also get money and praise, that's a nice to have bonus. In other words, your ambitions need to be pursued in the context of following a vocation. Now, what are vocations? Well, originally they were a concept in religion. Vocations came from God. So vocations for religious believers are literally things that you are uniquely called by God to do because of the special role God wants you to play in the realization of the divine purpose that goodness in all its forms should come to flourish perfectly and eternally in the universe. The work you are divinely called to undertake so as to make the world a better place and to contribute to ensuring that all shall finally be well may be very small and seemingly not very special. But as part of the divine plan, which only you can fulfill, your vocation is of infinite importance, and so are you. A vocation is always special to the person being called, and the work involved therefore requires a unique set of gifts, opportunities, and resources in a highly specific historical and social context. A vocation also always requires an unselfish desire to make the world a better place and must be followed with the virtues of integrity and benevolence. You cannot have a vocation to do or to be evil. On the other hand, there is paradoxically no greater personal happiness available to human beings than that which comes from doing one's best faithfully to fulfill one's vocations. But what about the non-religious? Most unhappiness at work comes from feeling that the work one is doing is pointless, that it is not making the most of one's talents and enthusiasms, that one cannot feel proud about what one is doing or the way one is doing it. And no one dispels these feelings by assuring you that you and your work are much appreciated and valued. By contrast, happiness at work consists in the feeling, this is what I was put on this planet to do, and these are the people whom I am meant to care about, and I am doing the work well, and on the whole, I am taking reasonably good care of those I am called upon to take care of. Moreover, although I am not motivated in this by the desire for wealth and glory, it is extremely nice when these things come along as well. So if you, as a coach or a coachee, believe that there is no ultimate and internal purposer in terms of whose purposes your life is ultimately to be explained, and there is no one to do the meaning when you feel that there are some people whom you are especially meant to care about and take care of, then accept that these are metaphors for deep truths about how you should live. In other words, if you have no religious beliefs about the source of what you take to be your vocations, act as if you had. But finally, failure. No matter how hard we try to make a success of our own lives, by faithfully following our vocations in our working lives and our personal relationships, we will often fail, sometimes miserably, and through our own fault. The good that you would do, you do not, and the evil that you would not, that you do. That's how St. Paul defines sinfulness. But he could just as well have been talking about addiction or other psychologically disordered behaviors. Religions have always recognized this and provided remedies by claiming that sin, a tendency to destructiveness and self-destructiveness, is universal and inescapable, and therefore not our personal fault. Nevertheless, we are all, especially addicts and depressives and the overly anxious, prone to compulsive acts of self-destructiveness whose harmfulness to others and ourselves we mostly fail to recognize. So what are the remedies for failure? Well, with enough honesty and humility, we are able to put our sins behind us, to forgive ourselves for them and be set free from their destructive power, mainly by ceasing to deceive ourselves in a whole multitude of ways. To become undeceived, we usually need access sources of spiritual strength by digging deep into the truth about ourselves. We also need help from others. And one of the central tasks of coaching is to help people to become undeceived. In this process of helping others, conscientious coaches will inevitably become less deceived about themselves. So that's all you need to know, I think, about religious beliefs as far as the practice of effective coaching is concerned. Thank you very much. End of lecture 3.